All right. Welcome, everyone. Should we do a quick round of introductions? Because I think it looks like we've got a new face in the room this time around, and then kind of jump right in with our agenda for today. I can start. I'm Sonia Berthasell, and I'm the town council's liaison to this group. So I'm not in charge of this group or running these meetings in an ongoing way, but by virtue of this being a pretty new entity, I've jumped in as the person who talked first today. I use she, her pronouns, and in my day job, I'm director at the Wilson Center over on College Ave. Pass it over here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leah Hakala. I am a resident of Orono and an associate professor at the University of Maine. I use she or they pronouns.
And I'm Malcolm Himshoot, he, him. I am co-pastor at the Church of Universal Fellowship on Main Street. An Orono resident, parent.
Hey everyone, Brian, pronouns, Orono resident and faculty member in sociology at UMaine.
I am Michael Williams. I use they, them, or he, him. I kind of joke that he, him is my business pronoun. I'm an Orono resident. My day job is pretty uneventful. I'm just a retail worker, but I'm somebody who's very passionate about queer and disabled rights and needs, and I'm mostly looking to just kind of get in on everything because I know that I was unfortunately missed at the previous meeting.
And I'm Doug Johnson, retired from the University of Maine as the Counseling Center Director there. And he, him are my pronouns.
Sophie Wilson, I'm the Orono Town Manager. She, her are my pronouns. I'm Emily. They, she are my pronouns. And I'm a mechanic that rows bike. Good. Great, yeah.
Well, good to be with you all again today. Last time we met, we did some brainstorming and set out for ourselves the task of looking at what the ad hoc DEI committee that had convened some manner of years ago now had done by way of a process. And then, you know, this group as an ongoing group could sort of look at what's been done in the past and help it inform what to do in the future. So hopefully that's enough preamble as we jump into our discussion today.
Definitely had an interesting time looking over some of the material that was sent out. I definitely had a particular interest on the survey material that was sent out and kind of the compilation of that. In high school, I did something similar where I actually pulled the entirety of my high school, not huge, but enough to make it certainly a task to get kind of a revelation on the queer community at my school. I went to a performing arts high school, and it was funny because a lot of people thought like, oh, well, everybody's gay there, like it's a performing arts high school. And we found that like actually a very small population of our entire school was queer, but we were just the queer community just tended to be very loud and out, and so it was funny because it was that sort of situation. And I thought that was a really kind of interesting lens to look through it as I was looking at some of the responses. I think that one of the things that I noticed is a lot of the stuff that like jumps out at you, the stuff that like repeats, especially like one of the highlights that I noticed was interactions with public figures like police or first responders, and a lot of way that they talk, that like the responses talked about wanting to train first responders, wanting to train police, wanting to make sure that there was appropriate measures in place for people who were interacting with the public. And I felt like that was something that was incredibly interesting, but also really important. And I feel like one of the things that I almost felt was under highlighted was the accessibility section. And I don't know if that's by way of just people not talking about it as much, and more of just like there being a smaller community. But that's one of the things that I obviously would highlight, being disabled myself, was the kind of small population that was talking about the idea of revamping roads, having public buildings and different access buildings being more accessible, like putting in ramps and fixing sidewalks. And I think that a lot of people really dismiss these concerns because they consider the disabled population to be a lot smaller, and they consider the able-bodied population to kind of outmatch, and so they're not as loud of a voice. But I feel like, especially with Orono and kind of Maine as a whole, is a very high veteran population. I see a lot of disabled veterans, and I see a lot of course, like other disabled folks who may not be veterans. But I definitely think that that would be something that I would definitely want to push the voice for.
I'll just piggyback on that really quick, especially because the community connector is going to stationary stop, not whatever the stop system, I guess.
Yeah.
That's my
Fixed stop.
understanding. Fixed stop, yeah, and no longer doing flag stop. And I've seen sometimes multiple people trying to get up to the stop as it is. And I haven't never kind of walked this area, or if I have, I've done it vaguely to know the condition of those sidewalks. So I think it would be important to get those ready as we transition to the stop system. If they're not already, of course.
Yeah, the community connector has been, I feel like as somebody who just is in the community in general, I feel like that's the number one thing I feel like I hear people complain about, especially like it's literally anybody, able, disabled, like everybody is like, I don't like the bus system, I don't like the scheduling, it doesn't work. I hear that from students too, especially students. That's a big thing because it's not like, for example, if you were to go from like near my apartment on Park Street to like the Family Dog, like that's not a short walk. And it's definitely like something that it's been super inaccessible for people just as a whole. And I think that that puts an even greater importance and emphasis on that being even more of a barrier for folks who are disabled, because then not only is that hard for them to walk or use their wheelchair to get down there, but at that point, then can they really go anywhere? It really limits how far they can go, and that can definitely be very isolating.
I'm curious if other folks have things that jumped out of them in the review of these materials, or alternatively, if anyone has sort of a proposal for if there's a systematic way that we want to move through this together today.
General question.
Sure.
First, how was all of this data shared with the community? Or has it been?
So
What you have from the website
Mhm.
was shared with the community. What you have in a document from me was shared by the community with the listening group, the DEI ad hoc.
Okay, and by shared, do you mean just posted on site? Was there advertised?
I think there was a presentation made to the town council, was there not? You can
Yep.
probably speak to that.
yeah, we had an advertised presentation made to the town council, so it was out, went through the listserv, got posted around that there would be a presentation. So the committee, it's about a 20-minute presentation, I want to say, with then questions and answers, or questions and more questions, depending on what it was. And then the material has been posted on the website since then.
I'm just so curious how many eyes from the community I've looked at, or even like understand that this work has been done. I think it's really important work. It's an important first few steps. And I wonder if it might be worth considering as another action item or an initial action item, having some kind of community conversation about this or what's been done so far.
Absolutely. I think that there's definitely not enough eyes on this. Like, as someone who like didn't even know this existed, like being a community member and not knowing this was available to me, like, because obviously like this is such a strong tool to spark that conversation that you're talking about. And I feel like that if we're not, like, this conversation has already been started, but we watched it kind of die out. So like, I feel like it's up to us to kind of revamp and re-push this, like, this is what the people are talking about. Are they still talking about it? Are they still talking about it like this?
Especially considering that this was kind of during the pandemic and perhaps experiences, feelings have shifted since then.
That makes a lot of sense to me that if not for pulling down the links that Sophie sent last month, I wouldn't have seen the town of Orono matrix, which had these action steps in the third column from February 22. So yeah, so that was like a chance to see the conversation continuing. Okay, it was prompted with 10 areas for action, and then what were some responses? And that prompted me to think, okay, so February 22, like, what would people say today if we put out the 10 things and then the 10 responses, then where would it go from there?
I have to wonder also, like, what this DEI survey would look like with an update of sorts, like, because I think in my opinion, I think some things would be more consistent. Like, you would see I think you would still see a lot of conversation around the police department. There's obviously a lot of conversation around retraining or additional training in terms of first responders, police, fire, ambulance. There's a lot of talk about like screening and things like focusing more from like a social work standpoint, talking about de-escalation, life-saving behaviors, and policies to promote like ethics and things like that feel more in line with the community. I definitely I think in part, like, I'm also a little bit startled by the conversation that's around like there's a note here that says get rid of chief of police and replace officers with racist offenses. And like, to me that's sort of startling to think that that's a readily available outcry that the community has, and that nobody is really doing like a proactive conversation around that. Like,
So if I could just, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to be clear that the highlights from the DEI survey, participant recommendations, the first time the town ever saw that was when Malcolm shared it.
Wow.
So it had not previously been shared with town staff.
I definitely think that that's incredibly important, obviously, because obviously folks with the power to change things can't change things if they're unaware. And I think that there's definitely some things that I would definitely see that we could put in place. One of the main things I think that we could put in place is trainings, because I know that there's one of the big ones that I know that I've done before, I've held before, ran, is safe zone training. That's something that you commonly see in universities, but it's also has commonplace in workplaces and other things. And it's a LGBTQ plus, since almost sensitivity training, I guess I would call it. But it's made to highlight and really connect concerns that should be highlighted when people interact with the LGBTQ community. And I think that that is incredibly important when it comes to folks who are supposed to be interfacing with the public, probably the most out of anybody else.
Safe zone trainings, can you say more about where you've done those?
I did those at Eastern Connecticut State University. That was my previous undergrad. I worked for about 2.5 years in the Pride Center I was a student ambassador and I worked doing a lot of different outreach and also kind of working on the way that the local community kind of viewed LGBTQ people. I worked a lot to revamp the space that we had. Originally, we had kind of just a smattering of really random flags that clearly people had brought in, and I ended up going in and budgeting out flags of each community to represent as many as possible. And then I handmade and wrote little plaques for each and every flag that was representative. And I remember hearing, even like after I left, like that last year that I was there during the pandemic, I had the head come to me all the time and be like, people are so excited when they come in and they're like, that's me, that's my community. And they'll point at one of the flags, whether it's one of the ones that's like a little lesser known. Either you'll see like maybe like the demisexual flag, or you'll see like maybe one of the asexual folks, or you'll see like gender fluid or two-spirit, and you'll see a lot of people like connect with that. And that was something that it's definitely the best job I've worked so far.
Yeah. And that sort of representation piece, I think, that was another thing that was sort of reflected in these survey results as like an opportunity for really positive community engagement, is just sort of co-building with the university, or as ourselves programs around food from different cultures. And a sort of related idea that an international student brought to me is, could we hang at some point, whether it's during diversity week or whatever, the flags of all the different international students, like across the bridge, those kind of ideas that allow people to feel celebrated in who they are. I think like, I love Leah's idea of a community conversation that is revisiting some of these topics and sort of getting more people engaged, because I think that there's some real opportunity to build that kind of opportunities for people to feel seen, recognized, and like they have opportunities to engage in a way that's constructive and great. So
I really like the idea of centering the matrix, because it is showing that the town is responding and that we are engaging in trying to make change and supporting DEI efforts. So, I mean, I think there's value in sharing the participant data as well, but also the next step is like, what is happening right now, and how can we leverage the town's voice, and not just them relying on us to make change, but utilize their perspectives to help us all move forward collectively.
And it's about a year on, I think now, from when this matrix was, a little over a year. So it might be an interesting opportunity to kind of further update this matrix and look at where are we now.
And when you talk about conversations that the community could hear, I'm not saying they did, I'm saying they could. The discussion of the matrix and the findings after the DEI committee's presentation, that was another whole workshop or committee meeting that council had.
Would it be possible to do multiple of those conversations as well? So at least one targeting the university when students are actually here, maybe one at the library. I don't know how many people live over at Dorigo Pines that might be interested in this conversation. It looks like a pretty large community, at least. So that would be something too, not just necessarily having one, but having multiple targeting specific places, parts of area.
Yeah, or at the downstairs from the thrift shop, that sort of town-owned space, which is really next door to another kind of senior housing place, would be a good spot for one as well. But
I think that one of the things that I wanted to highlight that could be relatively, I guess, easy to implement is the idea of calendars of religious and cultural holidays included on the town calendar. That could look like either documents that get put out, or that could look like just providing them on the website. Also like sign changing to different languages each month. I love that. I love the idea of that saying, like, you ever putting like welcome to Orono in multiple languages, or just welcome, or just hello, like anything like that, especially highlighting communities that are very prevalent here in Orono, because obviously there's usually like majorities of different types of people in different places. Like for example, I used to live in Western Mass, and there's a large Polish population there, and definitely like there's a lot of like Polish highlighting there that you see not only from the community but also from the town. Website itself could use a little help as well. So I think that its accessibility is fairly basic, but could be updated, especially in terms of things that we are trying to put out as a particular committee. Because I think that providing, for example, just providing like these documents can sometimes be a little bit difficult to wade through, even just something I noticed myself, especially like the matrix, for example. I think that that's not really in quite the layman's terms that the community may be looking for. And so I think that giving that a good update might be nice in a way, like, and obviously providing the document is fantastic for people who just want to look at the plain document and understand it like that is great. But I think that providing people with sort of an easier breakdown, easier to understand breakdown could be really fantastic for both accessibility and reaching more people.
Yeah, and that maybe sort of like a whole separate potential project for this group or a subcommittee thereof is to look at sort of web resources and accessibility and think through what are some suggested ways that could get a refresh that would be really good.
Yeah, and I think that could be another great link with both the community and the university, because we could be looking at students who are working in technology and who are working in web design, and really kind of get both the community's ideas and their ideas to kind of say, what do you think the website needs, and what does the community want, and how do we implement that from both a logistics standpoint of, okay, this is what the HTML looks like, but also like, what do we think that we need as both a creative standpoint and a standpoint of what do people want to look at? How do people want to read it?
I noticed Sarah Henry's name mentioned. Was she involved in the committee at all? Because
I think she was a resource someone knew about. So they
yeah,
wanted to make sure that others knew about her.
yeah, so we work very closely with Sarah, and she's really pretty well steeped in universal accessibility, so I think she could be a great resource to bring.
It's good to have those resources.
The university, I think, just also, I don't know how, I can't attest to how well it is, but I think they did try to improve the calendar for religious holidays and observances. I do have a contact that I can ask about that if we wanted to kind of not reinvent the wheel and see what's there and see what's also missing if there's anything.
So you
We have
know,
an internal.
Unless we've already got something.
yeah, and I stole it from, I
Oh, you-
borrowed it liberally from the university.
Okay.
So when
Was
they
that
update
recent?
their,
Was that recent too? Or you just mean when it
we've done
updates?
that for a couple of years.
Okay.
Thinking about things that are same or different since this came out, I was struck to see that there was some conversation on the town's human resource practices in the sense of going out, having that be wider, having more people know about governance and staff leadership. But I do know that this year a lot has moved along in terms of the workforce wanting to be heard in its own way, organizing a union or trying to organize a union as municipal workers. So I wonder what that conversation is right now and if it overlaps with our conversation.
I think there's an inevitability that it will. Because obviously, when you look at union workers and you look at some of the things that they're outlining that they want, a lot of things will overlap with things like accessibility and things with the town, especially municipal workers. What are they looking for in their work environments? And I feel like there is going to be, even if it's in a lesser sense, there will be some overlap with our conversations inevitably.
I wonder if it might be worth either during our community conversations or in this group setting, prioritizing the recommendations. Because given our limited bandwidth, I don't think it's possible I mean, it would be wonderful to be able to accomplish all of these, but I don't think it's possible. And I also am not sure I feel comfortable representing the voices of the community in prioritizing.
Yeah.
So that might be something worth exploring in the way that we structure our community conversations.
Yeah. I appreciate that reflection, Leah. And I want to piggyback off of it to remind anyone tuning in on Zoom or listening to this after the fact. This committee intentionally sort of seated half a committee because we didn't have very many Black, Indigenous, and people of color who applied to be on this committee yet. But we are accepting more committee members. So especially if you're a person who identifies as BIPOC and would like to join this committee, we would love to have more folks join. And we'd love to become a group that is as representative of diversity in the town of Orono as we can be.
Good plug.
Yep.
I was gonna say, like, talking to your point, definitely, like, I definitely don't feel like I could be representative of really anything other than my own struggles, to be honest with you. Like, as a queer person, I can talk about some of my experiences. As a disabled person, I can talk about my experiences, but I cannot talk about the intersection between being disabled and being Black. And I can't talk about the intersection of being queer and being Indigenous because it's not my place and it's not who I am as a person, and those are not my experiences. And I definitely think that feels like one of my biggest points, kind of what you were saying with like centering that around the community conversations. I feel like we really should make an effort to, if we can't immediately or in the very near future, bring on a BIPOC community member. I think really centering and highlighting like BIPOC folks who are talking in the community to really be our kind of uproar in a way to talk about like, okay, here's what you think about this, and you are an actual representative piece of your community. So what does that look like then from your perspective to make our movements more accurate and more authentic?
I'm curious if anyone who's been a little bit quieter so far this meeting has been like sitting on and thinking on reflections and insights for the group.
But it was very not refreshing, but a little uplifting to see that quite a few of the survey respondents had a positive outlook on what the town was doing. Not necessarily didn't pick out things specifically that I noticed, but they're just hopeful about the future. And that feels really important to hear that amidst the things that we have to do. It feels good to hear that some things are going well. Also to piggyback on what Michael was saying, it seems like it would be, I'm kind of having a hard time like picturing like bringing on one person to represent this massive, massive community. I mean, obviously we want more people, but of BIPOC people. But that is such a struggle to put on one person, even just a few people, because you can't expect someone to, it's just such a painful, there's so much pain, so much, there's just so, I can't put words to it, but it feels like there's a huge weight on the person's shoulders if they choose to come. And it makes me So we have to think about it. I feel like all of us have some distributed weight. Yeah. But obviously that doesn't make it any less important to have them on.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a hard thing.
When it came up last month, we thought, wouldn't it be great if when we meet again in a month, we're twice as big as a group and twice as colorful? And everybody kind of was gonna talk to people individually to see who else might join in.
Really only brought additional hair color, sorry.
And I think Carlos, being an international student, is like home for the summer back in Mexico, and so is not with us. But
What I found in my conversations with others, mostly faculty at UMaine and people who live nearby, is that they don't have time and or they don't want to be the BIPOC representative. That is a lot of weight to bear. And Emily, thank you so much for highlighting that, which is one of the reasons why I was thinking coming into this, that having those community conversations to allow for voices to be heard, even if they're not in the leadership position, but so that we're not speaking for others as much as possible, I think is so incredibly important.
yeah, I love that. What are you thinking, Sophie?
Well, I'm just thinking, we keep circling around this idea of a good place to start is a community conversation. And so I know that sometimes the town can be a scary moniker. I happen to think it's not scary, but I get it. I'm here. So I think it takes a little bit of thought in how you're going to plan a community conversation and how you're going to get people to come to it. So we just had a series of 6 community conversations about operations, and they, police, fire, Parks and Rec. We had like 15 people here from the library, Parks and Rec, and we had 3 people here for the police. So, yeah. So I think in many ways it's not as easy sometimes to just schedule it. I think some thought going into what is it you want to know? Because we do find that we get more people when we tell them what we're going to ask them. And how you can get, not only advertise it, but get people excited about coming. Because that's how we got so many people here for Parks and Rec. We had a couple of counselors that were really going out and connecting with people to do that. So I don't want to tell you what you want to learn. I think the committee needs to figure out what they want to learn. But I will tell you that sometimes the smaller venues and multiple can attract more people in my experience. Lori can also probably talk about that. She's had a few.
Library is less intimidating, I think, than this room. And offering multiple places gives people options too.
Yeah.
So they won't say, well, I couldn't make it that night.
It might be a good opportunity too to partner with organizations in the area. So, and especially maybe organizations that have a sort of different outreaches and are parts of different communities. And so maybe the library would be a great place to hold one. A lot of people utilize that space, and maybe we could ask the Islamic Center if they would want to partner and host one, and that's reaching a different network of people potentially. And I'm happy to throw the Wilson Center under the bus as a place to interact with a lot of our students. And the list could go on if we develop sort of how many of these things we would want and what is, maybe the right few to start with. But I think getting partner orgs might be a great way to help spread the word and sort of bring a sense of welcome to folks for whom maybe this feels a little bit intimidating to them.
I think that partner organization thing can be really important as well, kind of linking both of what you said and what Emily said, because with partner organizations, there are pre-existing followers of these organizations that they already follow a newsletter or they keep in touch in some way. And you're really building that spider web, that connection of like students who go to the Wilson Center and then they mentioned their friends that this thing is happening and there's a pre-existing ground for people to build out.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the big things that talking about what you mentioned is I was looking at some of the really positive things that people said in the pre-existing things. And I think that you're right, Ellen. People are hopeful. And I think those are the people that we need to reach, is we need to reach those people who are like, I think it's always important to reach out and gather information from the towns and residents. I'm so glad this ad hoc committee exists. It's gathering input and beginning the process. It's so needed. A permanent DEI committee would be a great step. This committee should have adequate representative from BIPOC community. I think the town is moving in the right direction. These people are people that we can reach out to and say, like, you are hopeful. Let us fulfill that. Let us really touch on that. You are excited for the town to move in the right direction. Let's bring your voice as you brought it here and let's amplify it and let's put this in a space where we can really boost everybody at the same time. And I think that one of the big things as well with partner organizations is I think that we should also use more lacked spaces, like stuff like the family dog, for example, like having like a place where everything is super just baseline. There's no intimidation, there's no like formality to it, because sometimes those are the best introductory states.
I love two verbs that you said, Michael. Amplify and boost. And that reminded me of something you said, Leah, with like engaging the energy. I always like to take it in and say, we're gonna do all the things, but like engaging it, like what's possible for you to do or for us to do together. And
Yeah.
so that boosting part.
Leveraging our collective
Leverage.
power.
Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that leveraging is in even better verb, honestly, because that kind of gives the instance of us using our power to boost their voices, but not in a way that feels like that we're taking it.
Right. Yeah.
I think diversifying how people can participate too would be useful. So we just put on an event on campus of a group I'm part of. We had like facilitate conversations in a group. I also attended an event where different tables talked in small groups as opposed to like all of us kind of in the setup and facing out here, which can also be intimidating. So if it's possible to diversify participation and also having like a board like that or something where people can kind of put post-it notes on things that they prioritize, where they can, participate a little bit more confidentially or anonymous, would also potentially help with turnout as well.
I love that idea. I think that should be like one of the main things that we do, because I have seen that work in so many different instances where if people like you have like a big board where people just stick post-it notes and it's like, what's important to you for the town to know? And it's like people can either have a conversation in the conversation spaces, and we both want to make those conversation spaces palatable, but we also want to make it so people can kind of just leave their conversation and leave. Because not everybody is really up to kind of the intensity of really having a face-to-face conversation, especially when you kind of do have to acknowledge that as people who hold some sort of power now, we also hold some sort of intimidation factor, because we're a figure of an organization. We're a figure of something, whether or not we're trying to make change, we are a figure of authority. And that can be really challenging for people. And I think that really making that both, I love the idea of small groups at the tables. That's so great. But I also think that the post-it note thing is just golden, because that's such a great way to both bring up turnout for even just people who are only there for a moment to write their ideas, but also because some people will be there to just write their ideas, but then they'll hear a conversation and they'll be like, maybe I do want to get in on that. And it like kind of brings people in a really interesting way.
Well, we also had QR codes posted up as well, so it didn't just be like writing down, but they could.
Yeah,
fill
that's
out
great,
a
too.
Mentimeter,
Yeah.
you know,
Leave it
post their
anonymous.
thoughts related to some type of prompt.
Yeah.
I think that it makes things more fun and is a nice hook also to have some food and snacks. And this could be, you know, an ask for volunteerism by partner orgs, but I'm curious if other people agree. Shall we try to make that the goal, is like, let's make this a fun food and snacks kind of.
That's definitely why I recommended Family Dog, is because they
Yeah.
already have like a really great,
Yeah.
nice outdoor space that provides good food and.
Our most successful outreach efforts at the counseling center were provide pizza or something
Mhm.
like that. for
Yeah.
We,
And
we find that even for boring council meetings,
it makes a big difference when there's an extra long council meeting. Sophie and Nancy often sort of will bring snacks in the midway point. It really does make a difference.
And
So,
Thin Mints help.
yeah, and it could be that if we approached businesses with this in a strategic way, I'm being aware that, you know, this group doesn't have a budget, but I also think there are creative workarounds. Like, we could ask Family Dog, hey, would you be willing to make us an appetizer? And then we assume that people who attend might buy their own beer, and you know, it can be win-win. So
To
so,
have some, I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just thinking like the store and the nest and
Mhm.
a board where people can write things. We've done a lot of that.
Yeah.
From the counseling center too.
Mhm.
So I think that could be very successful.
Yeah.
so,
That's such a good community for that.
yeah. So, I think that the committee needs to do what the committee likes to do or wants to do. As a town where we're a taxation arm, we try really hard not to ask the business community to donate that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And
Yeah.
if there was a relatively small budget for food, I think the town, I think I
We
could
could
swing.
figure out where
I
to
think
get
I
it
could
from.
swing a
Yeah.
little bit of food and snack, at least for the first community conversation, to see what it would be like, if that would help at all.
Well, then maybe it wouldn't have to include food the first round, just to have some kind of poster or some place for people to post things, whether it's a QR code or not.
Or even something at the library that's stationary for a week, you know, as an example. But
Yeah, like putting up stuff like that and like the library or like in Nest, like places that feel very similar in their kind of vibe like that. 'Cause I feel like the Nest has a very like slow, like cafe, coffee talk feel. And I feel like the library obviously has the propensity for that kind of thing, because it's definitely a calmer environment. And I definitely think that that's just leaving something to start, just to like even drum up, like even just the murmurs of a conversation to start would probably be great.
I imagine we'll learn a lot just by trying to do a series like this. Like, how many vibes does Orono have? How many scenes, how many venues should we like be in, from the Islamic Center to OBC and all points in between? And
would the Universal Church be a good?
oh,
place for it?
we're a great venue or networking organization. Yeah. CUF.
So I was thinking about this conversation, that this is about getting input, getting voices. And so there's words leveraging and what were the other two that you liked so much?
Amplify, leverage.
So some of those make me think, this is a piggyback on your comment about prioritizing things, but also separating out the implementation, the things to do. And so, because the town responded and has done a lot of things around DEI education and other things. So some of what we want to do is support that and give advice or give input or feedback to the town for the things that they would do. But then to what extent are we an action committee going to do? What are we going to implement and do? Because we had a difficult time coming up with a time to meet. So coming up with, I guess that's on my mind a little bit, the sort of the practical thing as I was reading through this. Oh, wonderful ideas.
Those twin features remind me of conversation from before. It was kind of like program or policy emphasis. And we had discussions, in making a recommendation for a standing committee. What would that standing committee be more of? Or could it be both? Both examples got featured in our report back to the town, one more programmatic, one more policy and assessment. So it's a great thread that you're picking up there. And I think since this group is the first standing body, what we decide we're able to do will probably shape our emphasis.
I think it helps to be realistic as well, though. Because I think that a lot of kind of blooming committees like us are very ambitious. And I think that it would benefit the community a lot more to kind of snowball effect our ideologies, where we kind of start small, but we show the community that we can actually do stuff. Because then once we have a vested trust in us with the community, then we can kind of do bigger events. We can have more conversations, but I think that the realistic ideology starts with small events where maybe the turnout's not so great, but people talk about it, people have conversations about it. And then when we have another one that's slightly bigger, it works more. But I think that that realism is almost almost a trust building exercise in a way, because I think that we're going to have these great ambitions and we're going to want to do these awesome things. But I also think that as a way to kind of not get too ahead of ourselves, I also think that we need to be realistic in what we know that we can do and what we know that we can achieve as however many people we have in here right now, like understanding like what is realistic, like are we, like the town kind of frowns upon asking community organizations like restaurants and things like that. So maybe we've shot a little too high then. Maybe we should look at something that's a little more reined in. But I think that the benefit of doing that really is to understand, well, what does that look like for us when we actually go to do something for the community? I feel like I'd rather put my whole heart and my whole soul into something small and have it turn out way better than we thought it was, than put my heart and soul into something huge and be disappointed by the turnout or the numbers or the barriers that we would have to face in order to implement this.
Yeah. So if we want like a successful proof of concept that is kind of getting into some of these recommendations from the past, a idea that I have, and feel free, anyone who has a better idea, we can also discuss those, but one that occurs to me as like low-hanging fruit that I think could be really easy to do is there are a lot of international students who are still in town during the summer, but whose lives are a little bit more flexible during the summer than at other times. They're all networked. There's like a email listserv where we can talk to all of them. We could plan a proof of concept that's like, let's go to campus and do a community meeting with our international students at the University of Maine. And have that be a proof of concept that feels really easy to me.
And we could say, here's what conversation was in 2021.
Yeah.
Here's some response in 2022. It's 2023. How are we all processing this and
Yeah,
and
exactly.
have that and have food?
And I can talk to Orlina and see if I know they do during the semester, these like Friday coffee hours. And so it could even be a Friday coffee hour event, like piggyback on their existing program. But if they're not doing those, then we can figure out how to budget for a little bit of snacks if that feels good. And Yeah.
Seriously, I can budget a couple snacks.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think that despite the kind of ideology of like low hanging fruit, I think that starting small is a lot more realistic and benefits our community a lot better. And I think that something that we want to start out with should be easy.
Yeah.
It should be simple. It should be a good proof of concept, because if we don't know if we don't have something, like if we don't have our baseline of yes, we can complete this, then we'll never know where we can go up. And I think that having either like piggybacking on a pre-existing thing, I don't believe that they're doing that because the semester is over.
Yeah.
But I do think that, especially with that sort of consistent idea in place, it wouldn't be so hard to sort of be like, well, this is kind of a pseudo
Yeah.
Friday coffee because that
Special
kind of
summer coffee hour, the Orono, it's, town's diversity, equity and inclusion committee wants
Right.
to know, wants to hear from our international students and build friendships with you. Like, let's come get some food.
And we could even like kind of joke in on it and make it like a lemonade hour instead because it's summer.
Mhm.
Like just something that feels fun and
Yeah.
fresh, but also familiar.
Where I'm going with this idea is some building up like what the Culture Fest does.
Mhm.
And what the Culture Fest, you've been to Culture Fest with different student organizations from different countries raise some funds for themselves by preparing food and bringing it and actually selling it. And I think, I don't know what venue that would work in, but invite international student groups to come and sell their own food to raise some money for their organization.
Yeah.
So,
CUF has a kitchen and dining area for up to 100 people, not to make it too big. Put that in the hopper.
It's a good hopper.
not to put a damper on anything, because this is great brainstorming. I just want to remind you that if you're gonna have more than 2 committee members, then whatever you do is gonna have to be noticed to the public.
Mhm.
You can notice it in a way that allows people to come and makes it very clear that you're wanting to meet with international students, and there's, but it does have to go out to the world. Now, this went out to the world, and you see that we packed the room, so I don't. think it's a-
world.
Hey, world, hopefully there are some people tuning in on Zoom.
Yeah.
But
I heard from some last month who were watching
great.
at a distance who I didn't see here. And they had passion and ideas, and
oh,
I
good.
invited them to come back or to come in person.
So it doesn't have to be recorded. There has to be some note of where it was, what committee members were there, and any action steps, but probably not going to take action steps out of a brainstorming. And it does not, like I said, didn't have to be taped or streamed or anything like that. So it's just the notice that is the legal barrier there.
Honestly, I think that that's more of a benefit than it is a detriment, honestly, because like, yes, I think the difference here is target audience is really what we're highlighting versus who we actually want / know will come. So I think what we're really talking about right now is our target audience is international students, but we would really love for everybody to come by. So I think that the fact that it has to go out to the public is definitely more of a benefit than a detriment, because definitely a lot of the way that we're talking about it seems like that we're just talking about these guys, but I think that I think we're just starting with a target audience in order to give us a baseline to talk about, like, okay, here's who we're talking to because we know that they have a consistent setup, but we'd prefer more people to come. And so I think that's sort of what we're going with here. So I think, I don't know about y'all, but I think I'd be more vibed about the fact that it actually has to go out to the community rather than it not going out to the community.
Seems great.
I'll just say with a caveat that if we do it when international programs does their normal program, we probably don't want to advertise that to the public because that's their space. So it might be beneficial if we were to piggyback off of that to
Yeah.
only have 2 members be at that.
I don't think they're doing that program anyway, so I don't
Okay.
think that that's likely something that we would be able to piggyback off of, because that usually is a self-contained semester idea. So I think doing it like he was saying, like there's plenty of room
Yeah.
and stuff like that for people. I think that doing it in a place where we feel like I think doing it in a neutral space where we can invite anybody that we need to is probably our best bet.
Speaking of that, Michael, you've brought up so many good points. Firstly, that of building trust. And I think that we need to center that. The community doesn't know all of us, and perhaps we maybe need to take a step back and think about just having like a meet and greet your DEIB Orono council meeting first, or some kind of like, we go to the family dog and people have an opportunity to come just to see us, to meet us, to build rapport before we start these community conversations. I don't know if that would be beneficial. I know we kind of talked about doing something like that in our first meeting. a
Gotta
couple
buy it
months
for
ago.
DIB. I'm kidding. I don't think they probably like that as much.
But
Yeah.
I do wonder if like our first event as the council is on campus for international students, that might appear to some as a bit exclusive or inaccessible.
Yeah,
And that seems to be the antithesis of our mission.
right.
So I love the idea of proof of concept, but I do wonder if maybe there's a more neutral space and a more inviting space that can be accessible for everyone in the community, including international students.
Yeah, I feel like honestly, that feels like almost an obligatory prelude in a way.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you can like really be like, all right, we're all here at Family Dog, like everybody come and meet us. I think another thing that I'd love to do is kind of everybody write a little bio and we pop it up on the website so that we can all have, and everybody picks like whether you have a formal headshot, whether you need a formal headshot, I'm a photographer. Then everybody, at least we get to put a face to the name if they either are just hearing about us in reports or they're just hearing about us like through word of mouth, then they have a face to the name.
I was thinking too, if I could just jump in, because I think I wasn't thinking campus. I would think of something like the Keith Anderson building as being a neutral location. And I like the idea of some sort of bio or us being there or introducing this event or something like that.
Yeah.
I love a meet and greet for the DEIB. I absolutely love that idea.
I think it'd be lovely. My question is how to publicize it in a way where word actually gets out through networks of trust and people show up. And so I think the international student one I pitched because like that I'm their buddy already and they're going to come to a thing I plan and then you all get to meet them. So it's like using my network. But also all of us are networked in different ways. And so if we're intentional about trying to make sure that, because I don't think that for some people, there are definitely some people who might see like, come to the Keith Anderson for a DEIB thing on the town's kiosk and be like, I'm there. But a lot of people are going to be like, that isn't invitational enough for me to actually feel like I'm the person who is being invited to that. And so I think there's some strategy with leveraging existing relationships in a way that ripple out.
So would it make sense, you have a meeting scheduled for June 13th? It is our election day, just to keep that in mind. So people will be out and on the move.
Cool.
A meet and greet is more of a drop in and have conversation. So I think that the Keith Anderson is free that day. I can double check, but that might be a way to at least start.
So it's election day here in council chambers. I wonder, what if, that could be kind of a fun, because then we can have posters on the door being like, meet the new DEIB committee. They're right down the road with snacks or something.
Honestly,
really
I
fun.
think that like a good way, I do think that a way to most people's heart is through the stomach. So I do think my proposal would be nachos with DEIB. Because nachos, like if we did, but I'm sure that like hell, I'll donate some of my own food to make this happen. Because I do think that it does make it friendlier if we add food. Because I do think us just like sitting there and being like it's still a bit intimidating. Plus, if there's a lot of still kind of hustle and bustle around the area, we want to make something that people are like, all right, I finished my really formal thing. Time to go do something chill.
What is this building that we're talking about?
Keith Anderson is next to the post office.
Never knew what's there.
Well, it could be a recruiting event.
That's a good idea.
Could be a lot of things.
Yeah.
It has the propensity for a lot.
I loved the networking even more than I love the neutral thing, but I can get behind this. We'll do is like step one is we plant ourselves at Keith Anderson for people can come to us on election day. Then why would they, or what will we talk about there? We can talk about, we're gonna kick off a series of community conversations
Exactly.
in different networks that are really relevant to specific groups. So we do invite your ideas and your networks and see
Yeah.
where.
So we could have some, at the Keith Anderson building, we could have some whiteboard
Yes.
paper and sticky notes
Sticky
up on the
notes.
wall and say, what communities should we partner with to do these?
Yes.
And where should we host them? And what would your ideas be about things we could talk about? And then help sort of use
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah, or
positive.
even like, what community are you from? What community do you want to see?
And that's when we go out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, nice.
Cool. All right.
So we're done.
Woohoo.
So
How was this scheduled as a 1 hour meeting or a 1.5 hour meeting?
can I tell you something? The
Sure.
schedule is just the max. It's never the min. You
Oh.
can always get done early.
Okay.
Anybody can do that. I just want to make sure I understand, so I support what you guys are thinking about. You were scheduled from 6 to 7:30 max on the 13th. So you want me to double check that for the Keith Anderson? And if it isn't available at the Keith Anderson, can I just check the library community room? I've got it right here. You shared it with me. That could be a kind of a backup.
Great.
Yeah,
Do
that
we allow
works great.
food?
Yeah, if you,
Of
if you're,
course.
I
if
wasn't,
you're happy
I
to,
wasn't
if
sure.
you're happy to honor that space for us, that would be amazing.
We have anything going on?
I'm just double checking. I like my newfound power. Nothing after 5 o'clock. So is there an individual that I could work with to arrange for snacks so that I'm not making the menu because everybody here?
I will do so.
Great.
So
Appreciate
I'll-
it, Michael.
Michael and I will talk budget and then he will talk menu and we'll figure that out.
And I'll
Um,
probably put out like an email to everybody that'll be like, what do we think is food good? And do we want to try and offer options for food sensitivities and allergies?
Okay.
Because I think that that's good, because like for something, like for example, like I mentioned nachos, like for example, I'm straight up allergic to red meat. So like like I definitely am very open to people being like, I'm gluten free, or you know, like that. Make sure everybody's good.
Does somebody want to work on a flyer or something to post if you'd like it to look different than the ho-hum town notice?
I'm not always one to volunteer for two things, but I do have some mean canvas skills. I do. I mean it.
And one
Pick
can
the
be,
best font you've ever seen.
I feel like the young folks are much better at.
I designed a lot for the programs and stuff when I worked in the Pride Center, so.
You're bringing in some great energy here.
Thank you.
So the other thing I'm hearing you're gonna want from me is the sticky butcher block and post-it or postable index cards, markers.
That sounds great.
Yeah, Post-it notes are probably best because they offer that adhesive.
Is it possible maybe to do name tags too?
Is there a projector in that thing building?
The Keith Anderson.
Yeah,
So
that one.
if
He'll
you're
get
gonna want to project and have technology, you're gonna wanna go to the community room at the library. We might be able to like find a laptop and an old
I mean,
Yeah,
projector thing.
Yeah, it could be, I'm thinking through accessibility of the Keith Anderson too. Is the lift operating in there
Right
currently?
now it is, but
Okay.
if we get people that go up that shouldn't be in, so like you get people who use it because have mobility issues and it works fine. You get people who use it as a way to take heavy things up over the stairs and the distribution of weight is completely different and it breaks it.
Okay,
So,
so currently operating, will make it
Currently,
plan A still.
but I'll double check that for us. Because we've got some events going this month. I think we were busy every weekend, which was kind of cool.
Is one of those locations preferable for this kind of event? I've never been to the Keith Anderson building.
It's,
Community room's a lot smaller than that.
Yeah, so it would probably be more intimate to be in the community room. Could, if you were expecting a huge crowd, you'd probably want to go to the Keith Anderson, but it can be kind of cold and cavernous upstairs.
It's a large room with hardwood floor and a stage in it, so there's been a lot of productions there, stage productions.
I wonder if we might want to do the library,
Yeah.
just because it's a meet and greet, more than likely people will be coming and going.
What's the
I'm not sure, I
policy
haven't been to
on
the community room.
food for the community
It's
room?
fine.
It's
Especially
fine.
in the community room, it's fine.
Okay.
I was going to suggest, it's a small room, but the library is open until 7 o'clock, where you could go meet and greet people throughout the library.
Yeah,
And,
I just want to make sure that we're not crossing any policies or anything like that.
Oh, no. In any town building, you couldn't have alcohol. That's the only.
I know, it doesn't hurt to be respectful and check.
Is it possible to have a display of DEI books and things too?
Oh, I like that.
That'd be fun.
That's a good idea.
we're all.
Who wants to start a band book conversation?
We've got
We've
band
got
book clubs.
We've got some pretty good staff.
I was gonna say with June coming up, libraries love to highlight like LGBTQ books.
Yes.
So,
When you asked about technology, what were you picturing? Like how would we? use
Just
it
a,
within
just
the
a
course of the drop-in?
option for like QR code or, you know. But that's something that could be just pulled up on the laptop, set to the side and say, here, you
Yeah.
know.
I'm happy to
Print it up.
set this up and
Yeah.
just have it chilling. Like as long as nobody snatches my iPad, we're good. Also, there are little projectors right now at Walmart that are on sale.
So there's a way to attach a QR code to a PDF. Like you scan it with your phone and then it will pull up something like this.
Yeah.
Could we, I don't have the capability to do that, but
Yes.
is there someone who could do that? So at our meet and greet, we could say, and this is what we will be discussing at our,
Yeah, we
Community
can set up a
conversation
couple of
events.
different QR codes so
Yeah.
that people know exactly what they're getting spit out into.
right,
So if we want to have one that's specifically for the matrix, we can have one that says like, scan this for the DEIB.
Yeah.
Is it the ad hoc matrix or is it like the,
Down.
town of Orno.
okay, yeah, the
DEI
town board on
recommendation
matrix then. And we can have it so that like, we'll have a couple of different ones if we need to.
So we're planning this event for what is sort of our next scheduled meeting time. Is that correct? I'm wondering if it would behoove us, is there enough planning details going into this that it might be helpful to have a subcommittee meet and make sure we have all our ducks in a row ahead of time? Or do we have enough ducks in a row that, like, you know, we know who's making the poster and we're good? Curious what folks think about that.
So I think there are a couple of clear assignments. There's some stuff in here that staff can just do.
Yeah.
I think it might make sense for within the next 2 weeks, for us to get an email out to folks and let everybody know what we're doing thus
Yeah.
far and if questions have come up. And if folks feel like we need more conversation, we could have a Zoom or something like that, if that fits.
Sort of, yeah, like a drop in.
Yeah, just, I know that folks here are really busy and I want to honor that.
some, I would volunteer and maybe others could come a little early that night and make sure our capture boards say whatever it is that we want to prime people with or prompt or capture.
Yeah, that sounds good, Malcolm. I could show up early to set up as well, and that's probably as much additional planning like work as really is needed.
Yeah, and I'll take a look to see what that projector is on sale for, because I haven't checked recently. Because I work in the electronics part of Walmart, so I just like see it a lot. But if you're
I think we
looking
could
for
just
something
use a
like that,
computer.
it's like a super cheap little dude that you like.
The library, we have a projector.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah, we've got a, we
Yeah.
have a computer display as well, so.
Okay. I just want to make sure that like if we needed it in the future, like that was something that we could move with the community.
So offline, Michael, could we schedule a time to talk about budget snacks and flyer?
Absolutely. Would you like me to make some drafts for the poster?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I don't even think you have to do drafts. I think you
I'm
can
about to
do
get-
just
I'm about to
one
get-
that you
To get
like.
really unbusy.
Once the flyer is approved by all of us, is it okay for me to like post it on my
Oh,
Instagram
gosh,
page,
yeah.
Facebook page, share it out?
Yep.
Do we have an,
Yes.
does DEIB have an Instagram? Are we allowed
Town,
to?
town has an Instagram.
Should we add that as an agenda item to
Can you
look
let me
into and
think
talk
about
about at
Yeah.
the next
Yeah,
meeting?
can I think
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah,
Think about that, ask people if we're allowed to have that. I think just an Instagram is good. 'cause
Well,
I
I'm
think-
thinking TikTok and. I don't know.
okay, so that's maybe a nice segue to, so for, I mean, I guess our next meeting is the meet and greet. But our following meeting, our hypothetical July meeting, like web presence / social media.
Are we just
And
gonna
then are there
TikTok his
other,
Thin Mints? Like, I don't know what we're gonna make for TikTok.
like, sort of recap the meet and greet and future
Debrief.
community conversations?
Let's start planning.
Mm-hmm. Sort of more planning,
We can
okay.
start planning, yeah. I
And
agree
that
with
seems like enough of a draft agenda for now, yeah,
That'll be a lot.
great.
Can I jump in, Sophie?
Yeah.
I'm a little unclear as to, are we doing a sort of meet and greet that's kind of a, we are there, we're not doing any formal presentation or anything?
No formal presentation. It's mostly just like hey, we are the DEIB. And it's a way, like, as you were saying, to build trust with the community so that when we start doing events, they actually know who we are.
And I really like the idea of putting up a bio. Maybe that can be our homework.
That, I think that we should wrap that into web presence.
Okay.
So,
So give us 2 months.
yeah, so like, think about what you want to represent yourself as in like a little blurb. I would say probably like 250 words or less. Not to put that.
So you have a page on the website that will be yours to do what you want. Right now, it just has your names and links to your the meeting video and minutes and.
So yeah, that'll be wrapped into the web presence then. So I'm glad that we have that. Thanks.
So when you look at July, if we stayed on track, it looks like we'd be looking at like the 11th or the 18th, a Tuesday.
I will be out of town on the 18th. I can do the 11th.
I'm probably best suited for the 11th.
Does 6 o'clock work? And again, I'll put 6 to 7:30 with the idea that if we don't make it to 7:30, that's okay.
Great. I would like to say that, like we had a really nice flow in this conversation and we like got stuff done. Oh, good. Yeah. Awesome.
Cool, thanks for that reflection.
You got it. Yeah.
I would like to say that if anyone there were some things in this matrix about like, oh, looking at the budget for DEI priorities and about community policing and all kinds of stuff. And so just by way of an FYI, tell your friends, we are in the middle of town council budget season. The members of the public are welcome to come learn about the budget. And this Thursday's topic is public safety, which includes fire and police. So if anyone is interested in being part of those conversations, now you know it's this Thursday.
Definitely an
When is
important
that? What
conversation.
time?
5 to 7.
5 to 7.
Yep.
Sophie's got us.
Yeah, it's some, but I'm interested.
Great.
I'm interested in the issue. I know that talked with the police quite a bit about the need for social work
Yeah.
on a police
That was in
force.
here a lot.
Yeah. And if I could just squeeze this in, I don't want to lose your emphasis on international students. And I was thinking one of the one of the recommendations here is really to greet and welcome and help people feel like they belong. And I think that town does some things to welcome students when they come back. But I know there's a whole orientation for international students that goes on when they come in late August.
Yeah, we're usually part of that.
Okay, okay.
I mean, not a huge part, but we get a little tiny slice.
It might be a good place for us to have some kind of a
Yeah.
presence too.
That's a nice idea.
I think we definitely have a couple meetings to address that, because especially if we address it in the July meeting and then we're looking at it for, you said they come back in August, like looking at it for that August section, then that would be a great way to do things.
And another population that has a lot of BIPOC folks is athletes
Yeah.
who arrive at
definitely.
the beginning of August usually.
Yeah, that might be something that the group might want to send a representative report to with the police chief or
That would be great.
others, because we usually have some time with the athletes. What I'm wondering is, normally with a committee, there is a formal chair who I work closely with on logistics and making sure I can get things set up the way people would like it. The council was really clear that they didn't want, not the way I want it, but the way you want it for your meeting, agendas, background information, that kind of stuff. I know this group does not want to kind of do that, and I love the flow of how you're doing things. Could we just select an individual that I could work with for the July meeting? To make sure that I've got the agendas, the background, that kind of stuff. That will work.
If it's mostly compilation, because I noticed you've taken a lot of notes, I'm happy to serve as the ghost fair.
The ghost chair.
It could
Yeah.
also be It could also be a duty that sort of rotates where someone will say, for the July meeting, I'd be happy to work with Sophie to draft the agenda and make sure we've got everything. And could be the person who, you know, as I sort of de facto did this meeting, welcomes people, does introductions as needed and says, let's get going. And that could be a duty that rotates and we take turns at if it doesn't feel that we're at the point where a chair makes sense yet.
And I don't, for me, it's a matter of, hey, this, here's what I have. I'm working on these minutes. What does this make sense?
Yeah.
Minor, maybe 20 minutes of
Yeah.
prep.
Yeah, then I'm happy to serve as July's.
I think our group could do that model.
I love a good non-hierarchical organization.
Yeah, if anybody who's scribbled down some stuff could just like pop me an email.
Sure.
With anything that it's okay if it's just an image, I will transcribe it happily myself. But if anybody who took notes, they could send those over to me, then I will compile them and.
I wasn't asking for that. We've got staff that will put minutes together if you want. I mean, they don't have to, if
I
that's.
mean,
what you'd
I just
like.
noticed that we had some scribblers here, so.
Yeah, that's just to keep my brain busy. And
Yeah, we usually go back to the video
Okay.
and run.
Just because I know that I think Sonia was taking down some like ideas for the international setup, and I do want to make sure that doesn't get lost.
And if you'd like to write notes, minutes, whatever you want to call them, please, you're welcome to do it. I also know you're a volunteer.
I'm a volunteer, but I also like am very passionate about this kind of thing. And honestly, if this could be my career, I would be overly delighted for that.
So does someone need to
Convince
formally
anybody?
adjourn?
There's a convener and an ender, right?
Someone to kick us out.
I'm happy. I don't think that we need that to that level of formality, but I'm happy
Anybody
to
wanna
say, does anyone object to us adjourning this meeting at this time?
No.
Great. That feels like a good consensus to me. Lovely to be with you for this period of time. We ended 10 minutes early. Look, let's go.
Better get Sonia a little
Wonderful.
gal.
Yeah, that would be fun, wouldn't it? I think there's one over there.
We have a raised hand.
Oh, great.
Let me see. Yep, let me see.
I'll look over here because I
Been a
can.
race for a long time. They might have given up.
I'm going to promote to a panelist.
Because we can only see ourselves. What
Right.
is that?
It'll change here shortly when she promotes them.
Webinar. moment.
This is
Michael, were
Emma.
you also on the list last month or did you come in since last month?
I was. last
Hello?
month, But unfortunately, I had some.
All right, I think,
Hello.
hello, I think we
Hello.
can hear you too. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Emma McCallan, and I've lived in Orono for 15 years. I'm affiliated now, being quite retired. I'm affiliated with Wabanaki Reach and with Peace and Justice Center of Bangor. And I'm very excited about what you're doing. And I had lots of ideas, and I heard so many of them being spoken tonight, which excited me. But one thing I wanted to suggest is the possibility of having like a multicultural community picnic in back of the library in the amphitheater, and bringing in some multicultural voices, literally music, drumming, a choir, handbells, anything that would represent a certain group, and having that be part of actually all of our meetings. I think would be wonderful to have some kind of cultural representation in that, to sort of, soften the left brain and bring in the right brain, so that we have more of a balance and a softening and warmth. And the other thing is that if we, for instance, brought in like a middle school choir, think of all the parents and grandparents who would come. I think it's a way, of really bringing people in as well. So I had thought about the possibility of this picnic, and then breaking, after we ate and played, breaking into some small groups, and then having you folks facilitate like 3 bullet points to discuss whatever it is, and wherever we are in the process. But it just seemed like a fun way and a relaxed way to build trust and get to know one another. So thank you for letting me speak.
I love that idea
Great idea.
personally. I think that that's such a cool and fun way, especially since in the notes, people recommended and requested more festivals and events and stuff like that. That sounds like the ideal way to do it.
Emma, did you give any more thought to joining the are we a council?
Or committee.
Committee? Yourself?
you
'Cause
talking to me,
octogenarian.
Malcolm?
Yeah. I'm
Yes,
talking-
yes, what I've been doing is trying to find some BIPOC people. I've done quite a lot of community organizing. And so I've been running around looking at my friends and talking to them to see whether or not they'd be interested. And in fact, I think one of my friends was here. I can't tell who else is on Zoom, but a friend of mine is here who is going to be doing some graduate work. She graduated last year from the university and has taken a year off, and then we'll go back and do some graduate work. So I'm hoping she's here, and she wanted to come and kind of get an idea of what the committee was like and all. So hopefully she may be interested in applying for that. So I really want to respect the filling the slot with BIPOC people. I think that's so important. But I'm definitely interested in doing work with you and, being on subcommittees or however it's set up that you want community to come in and be part of. I'm thrilled to do that. So thank you.
That's awesome.
So that give me a different question for our meetings. Is there a different format that we could use to have everybody see each other?
So yes, there is. I'm not the IT person, but I will make that happen next time.
That'd be great.
That's something I actually probably know the answer to, Sophie.
All right.
Ooh, we did it.
Woohoo. All right,
Someone was watching.
that's wonderful. Yeah, and with a great idea too.
I love that.
The Maine Multicultural Center would be another great group of folks to touch base about who might want to co-sponsor a A picnic in the park perhaps
Is that
with
a
drumming.
humane group?
Love that idea.
Is that a humane group?
They're not, no, they're based in Bangor.
Oh,
So they're the umbrella organization that wins these days. Anyway, they do great. They do a lot of really great work. Yeah.
that's, I was like, I want to work on that. About them.
Not really much of a